next is anchor 5, which included structure of DNA and chromosomes and mitosis and meiosis. There is a lot of information in anchor 5, so I would definitely make sure you're spending the time going back through all of this material and understanding it. One of the first things that we talked about in anchor 5 was the structure of DNA, and you guys actually built a couple different models of the structure of DNA. And as we have talked to the side, a nucleotide has 3 parts. It has the phosphate group sticking up, the sugar in the center, and then the base sticking out in the middle. Now, when we went over anchor 6 genetics, you guys could all tell me that DNA has those 4 bases A, T, C, and G. And if I ask you to take a look at a piece of DNA, you can tell me that the bases are here in the middle. This is where the A's, T's, C's, and G's are. And you should all know that A always pairs up with T and C always pairs up with G. So that's the part that everybody always remembers, the middle. But remember, DNA is that double helix. And the structure of that is, imagine a chain of a bunch of these nucleotides all hooked together on one of these sides, and a chain of all of those nucleotides hooked together to make up this other side. So DNA is made up of 2 chains of nucleotides hooked together, and in the center, those 2 chains are held together by the bases, the A pairing with the T and the C pairing with the G. So that was our discussion of DNA and its structure. Now, DNA is not all spread out in the cell like this double helix. We've talked about this in the past. If our DNA was like this in the cell, there's no way that it would fit in the cell. So instead of being all stretched out in that double helix, imagine taking this DNA and kind of squishing it all up on itself. So it's more coiled like this. Now this is a bad drawing. But when DNA is in the nucleus, most of the time it's in the form of that scrunched up DNA. We call that DNA chromatin with an N. Now that chromatin will coil up even more, squish up even more, to make a really tightly coiled strand called a chromosome. And you guys picture chromosomes more like this X here down at the bottom. But this is kind of the logic of what those different structures represent. Now, a chromosome is made up of 2 sides of identical DNA. So this whole side over here is one really, really long piece of DNA all scrunched up. And this side of the chromosome is the same exact copy of that DNA all scrunched up again. We call those 2 sides of the DNA the chromatids. So one chromosome is made up of 2 chromatids. And those chromatids are held together in the center by a structure called a centromere. So again, take some time, make sure you understand all of these C words on this slide. Chromatin, chromosome, chromatid, centromere. There's a lot there. The next thing we talked about in anchor 5 was the stuff about chromosome numbers. Now, if you take any cell that you have in your body and put it under the microscope, I can guarantee that you're going to find 46 chromosomes in those body cells. So if you take a skin cell, a blood cell, an eyeball cell, a liver cell, whatever kind of body cell you take, those cells are all going to have 46. And those chromosomes are going to be identical in every single cell. We call those body cells somatic cells. And of those 46 chromosomes, if you guys remember looking at the picture of people's chromosomes all spread out, we have 44 of these 46 that are in charge of all of our traits. So our hair color, eye color, how tall we're going to be, what diseases we're going to develop. Those first 44 chromosomes, we call those autosomes. The last 2 chromosomes are sex chromosomes. And we have 2 different types in the human race. We have the X chromosome and we have the Y chromosome. If you inherit 2 copies of the X, one X from mom, one X from dad, you are going to be a female. If you inherit one X from mom and a Y from dad, you are going to be the male. Now, in every single cell in your body, all of those cells have all of those different types of chromosomes. That makes up our 46 total. We call those types of cells diploid. You may want to think, okay, diploid starts with D, so does the word double. So all of those cells have double the amount of chromosomes. They're diploid. On the other hand, we have a special type of cell in our body called sex cells that only have half of the chromosome number. So think haploid means half. So half of 46 is 23. And if we think about why those sex cells, why those gametes need to have 23, when a sperm and an egg come together, they each need to be carrying half of the chromosome number. So the egg carries 23, the sperm carries 23, so that when they make the baby, that baby has 46 chromosomes. So the only type of cell in the entire human body that's ever going to have a different number of chromosomes are the sex cells. Eggs in females, sperm in males. So make sure you keep those 2 words straight. Diploid, double, haploid, half. Okay, so in your mind, kind of think of all that stuff we just talked about as like the first half of this anchor. All the stuff about DNA, all the stuff about chromosomes and chromosome numbers. Now, the second half of anchor 5, we took a look at 2 processes that involve chromosomes. We looked at mitosis and we looked at meiosis. And the first thing we're going to talk about today is the fact that every cell has a life cycle, or we call it the cell cycle. Think about your life so far. You were a baby, then you were a toddler and a child, now you are teenagers, and eventually, somewhere in your 20s or 30s, you're going to reproduce to make another one. That's kind of what the cell is doing in the cell cycle. And with mitosis, mitosis is the name of the process that takes one cell and splits it into 2. So the first thing that you need to know about mitosis is we start with one cell and we end up with 2. The second thing you need to know about mitosis is that everything stays the same. So our chromosome always stays the same. So we start with a cell that has 46 chromosomes, and when it replicates, the daughter cells have 46 chromosomes. So mitosis goes from diploid and keeps the cells diploid. All of the chromosomes numbers stay the same. So this is going to happen in all of our body cells. So if you get a cut on your arm and your cells need to reproduce in order to fix that wound, the cells in your skin are going to go through mitosis. Let's say your stomach lining needs replaced, so the cells in your stomach lining are going to reproduce in order to replicate that stomach lining. They're going to go through mitosis. So mitosis, think body cells, all the cells in your body. And you guys should remember looking at pictures of these different types of cell or different phases of mitosis. Just for time's sake, I'm not going to read you all of the different phases, but I would go over, take a look at these different phases and what's going on with the chromosomes. So just kind of quickly, interphase, this is when the cell is normal, everything is fine. Getting ready for cell division. In prophase, it's preparing. All of the chromosomes are starting to condense. Our nucleus starts to break down. And in metaphase, the chromosomes are lined up in the middle. So meta, middle. Anaphase, those chromosomes get split, one side of the chromosomes move to the left, the other side of the chromosomes move to the right. So anaphase is away. And telophase and cytokinesis a lot of the times happen simultaneously. Telophase, we start to see that there's two cells forming. The chromosomes are going to start unwinding. The the nuclear membrane is going to reform again. And in cytokinesis, they're officially cut in half. Okay, so we started with one cell, and now we have two separate cells. So mitosis, again, starts with one cell. If we count the number of pieces of DNA, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And if we look at our daughter cells, we still have 6 pieces of DNA. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. In the left cell, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces of DNA in the right cell. So mitosis, everything stays the same. Meiosis, think sex. The only time in the entire human body where meiosis is ever going to happen is to make gametes. So for males, that's going to be to make sperm, and for females, that's going to be to make eggs. Now, some major differences between mitosis and meiosis. Meiosis starts with one cell, as you can see here on the left, and it goes through 2 divisions. The cell splits once, and then each of these cells split again. And we end up with 4 cells at the end of meiosis. At the beginning, we start with 46 chromosomes, and each sperm cell or each egg cell has only 23 chromosomes. So we go from a diploid cell, our original cell, into haploid cells. The chromosome number gets cut in half. So remember, meiosis is going to make these sex cells because they're the only cells in the whole body that have half the number of chromosomes. Okay? Now I'm going to skip ahead for a second and look at the last slide of your PowerPoint notes. And when we tie all of this stuff together, mitosis, meiosis, sex, let's think about all of this together. Now, you started off as technically 2 gametes. You started off as a sperm and an egg. Each of those gametes was only 23 chromosomes. So you'll see that this word down here is below the dotted line. So everything down here is going to be haploid. When sperm and egg came together, that made a cell, 23 plus 23. You started off as a single cell called a zygote. That process is called fertilization. So when sperm and egg come together, we call that fertilization. Now, how did you get from a single cell to the trillions of cells that you are right now? One cell started and divided into 2, 2 divided into 4, 4 into 8, 8 into 16, and eventually you were born and you've grown into what you are today. All of these cells in your body still have 46. What process takes cells and makes exact copies of them? Mitosis. Okay? Now, currently in your body is and has the possibility to make gametes. So females are making eggs, males are making sperm. The only process that does that is meiosis. Now, because I'm running out of time, take a look back. I'm going to reverse this and look over and compare sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction involves meiosis and mitosis, and asexual reproduction just involves mitosis, making exact copies of organisms. Okay, so again, because I'm running out of time, make sure you take a look at these, and as usual, if you have any questions, please let me know.